We're on day 45 of our Bible reading plan, and we're reading Exodus chapter 12, 2nd Chronicles chapter 33, John chapter 18, verse 1 to verse 18, 1st Corinthians chapter 2, verse 1 to verse 16, and Psalms chapter 45. We're reading from the Berean Standard Bible. Exodus chapter 12. Now the Lord said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, this month is the beginning of months for you. It shall be the first month of your year. Tell the whole congregation of Israel that on the 10th day of this month, each man must select a lamb for his family, one per household. If the household is too small for a whole lamb, they are to share with the nearest neighbor based on the number of people and apportion the lamb accordingly. Your lamb must be an unblemished year-old male, and you may take it from the sheep or the goats. You must keep it until the 14th day of the month, when the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel will slaughter the animals at twilight. They are to take some of the blood and put it on the sides and tops of the doorframes of the houses where they heat the lambs. They are to heat the meat that night, roasted over the fire, along with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. Do not eat any of the meat raw or cooked in boiling water, but only roasted over the fire, its heads and legs and inner parts. Do not leave any of it until morning. Before the morning, you must burn up any part that is left over. This is how you are to eat it. You must be fully dressed for travel, with your sandals on your feet and your staff in your hand. You are to eat in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. On that night I will pass through the land of Egypt and strike down every firstborn male, both man and beast, and I will execute judgment against all the gods of Egypt. I am the Lord. The blood on the houses where you are staying will distinguish them. When I see the blood, I will pass over you. No plague will fall on you to destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt. And this day will be a memorial for you, and you are to celebrate it as a feast to the Lord, as a permanent statute for the generations to come. For 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. On the first day you are to remove the leaven from your houses. Whoever eats anything leavened from the first day through the seventh must be cut off from Israel. On the first day you are to hold a sacred assembly, and another on the seventh day. You must not do any work on those days except to prepare the meals. That is all you may do. So you are to keep the feast of unleavened bread, for on this very day I brought your divisions out of the land of Egypt. You must keep this day as a permanent statute for the generations to come. In the first month you are to eat unleavened bread from the evening of the 14th day until the evening of the 21st day. For 7 days there must be no leaven found in your houses. If anyone eats something leavened, that person, whether a foreigner or native of the land, must be cut off from the congregation of Israel. You are not to eat anything leavened. Eat unleavened bread in all your homes. Then Moses summoned all the elders of Israel and told them, go at once and select for yourselves a lamb for each family, and slaughter the Passover lamb. Take a cluster of hyssop, dip it into the blood in the basin, and brush the blood on the top and sides of the door frame. None of you shall go out the door of his house until morning. When the Lord passes through to strike down the Egyptians, he will see the blood on the top and sides of the door frame and will pass over that doorway. So he will not allow the destroyer to enter your houses and strike you down. And you are to keep this command as a permanent statute for you and your descendants. When you enter the land that the Lord will give you as he promised, you are to keep this service. When your children ask you, what does this service mean to you? You are to reply, it is the Passover sacrifice to the Lord, who passed over the houses of the Israelites in Egypt when he struck down the Egyptians and spared our homes. Then the people bowed down and worshipped. And the Israelites went and did just what the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron. Now at midnight the Lord struck down every firstborn male in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sat on his throne to the firstborn of the prisoner in the dungeon, as well as all the firstborn among the livestock. During the night Pharaoh got up, he and all his officials and all the Egyptians, and there was loud wailing in Egypt, for there was no house without someone dead. Then Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron by night and said, "Get up, leave my people, both you and the Israelites. Go, worship the Lord as you have requested. Take your flocks and herds as well, just as you have said, and depart, and bless me also." And in order to send them out of the land quickly, the Egyptians urged the people on, for otherwise they said, "We are all going to die." So the people took their dough before it was leavened, carrying it on their shoulders in kneading bowls wrapped in clothing. Furthermore, the Israelites acted on Moses' word and asked the Egyptians for articles of silver and gold and for clothing. And the Lord gave the people such favor in the sight of the Egyptians that they granted their request. In this way, they plundered the Egyptians. The Israelites journeyed from Ramses to Succoth with about 600,000 men on foot, besides women and children. And a mixed multitude also went up with them, along with great droves of livestock, both flocks and herds. Since their dough had no leaven, the people baked what they had brought out of Egypt into unleavened loaves. For when they had been driven out of Egypt, they could not delay and had not prepared any provisions for themselves. Now, the duration of the Israelites' stay in Egypt was 430 years. At the end of the 430 years, to the very day, all the Lord's divisions went out of the land of Egypt. Because the Lord kept a vigil that night to bring them out of the land of Egypt, this same night is to be a vigil to the Lord, to be observed by all the Israelites for the generations to come. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "This is the statute of the Passover. No foreigner is to eat of it, but any slave who has been purchased may eat of it after you have circumcised him. A temporary resident or hired hand shall not eat the Passover. It must be eaten inside one house. You are not to take any of the meat outside the house, and you may not break any of the bones. The whole congregation of Israel must celebrate it. If a foreigner resides with you and wants to celebrate the Lord's Passover, all the males in the household must be circumcised. Then he may come near to celebrate it, and he shall be like a native of the land, but no uncircumcised man may eat of it. The same law shall apply to both the native and the foreigner who resides among you." Then all the Israelites did this. They did just as the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron. And on that very day, the Lord brought the Israelites out of the land of Egypt by their divisions. Our next reading is from 2 Chronicles chapter 33. Manasseh was 12 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 55 years. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord by following the abominations of the nations that the Lord had driven out before the Israelites. For he rebuilt the high places that his father Hezekiah had torn down, and he raised up altars for the Baals and made Asherah poles, and he worshipped and served all the host of heaven. Manasseh also built altars in the house of the Lord, of which the Lord had said, "My name will remain in Jerusalem forever." In both courtyards of the house of the Lord, he built altars to all the hosts of heaven. He sacrificed his sons in the fire in the valley of Hinnom. He practiced sorcery, divination, and witchcraft, and consulted mediums and spiritists. He did great evil in the sight of the Lord, provoking him to anger. Manasseh even took the carved image he had made and set it up in the house of God, of which God had said to David and his son Solomon, "In this temple and in Jerusalem, which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel, I will establish my name forever. I will never again cause the feet of the Israelites to leave the land that I assigned to your fathers, if only they are careful to do all that I have commanded them through Moses, all the laws, statutes, and judgments." So Manasseh led the people of Judah and Jerusalem astray, so that they did greater evil than the nations that the Lord had destroyed before the Israelites. And the Lord spoke to Manasseh and his people, but they did not listen. So the Lord brought against them the military commanders of the king of Assyria, who captured Manasseh, put a hook in his nose, bound him with bronze shackles, and took him to Babylon. And in his distress, Manasseh sought the favor of the Lord his God, and earnestly humbled himself before the God of his fathers. And when he prayed to him, the Lord received his plea and heard his petition. So he brought him back to Jerusalem and to his kingdom. Then Manasseh knew that the Lord is God. After this, Manasseh rebuilt the outer wall of the city of David from west of Gihon in the valley to the entrance of the fish gates, and he brought it around the hill of Ophel and heightened it considerably. He also stationed military commanders in all the fortified cities of Judah. He removed the foreign gods and the idol from the house of the Lord, along with all the altars he had built on the Temple Mount and in Jerusalem, and he dumped them outside the city. Then he restored the altar of the Lord and sacrificed peace offerings and thank offerings on it. And he told Judah to serve the Lord, the God of Israel. Nevertheless, the people still sacrificed at the high places, but only to the Lord their God. As for the rest of the acts of Manasseh, along with his prayer to his God and the words of the seers who spoke to him in the name of the Lord, the God of Israel, they are indeed written in the Chronicles of the kings of Israel. His prayer and how God received his plea, as well as all his sin and unfaithfulness, and the sites where he built high places and set up Asherah poles and idols before he humbled himself. They are indeed written in the records of the seers. And Manasseh rested with his fathers and was buried at his palace, and his son Haman reigned in his place. Amon was 22 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 2 years, and he did evil in the sight of the Lord, as his father Manasseh had done. Amon served and sacrificed to all the idols that his father Manasseh had made, but he did not humble himself before the Lord as his father Manasseh had done. Instead, Haman increased his guilt. Then the servants of Haman conspired against him and killed him in his palace. But the people of the land killed all those who had conspired against King Haman, and they made his son Josiah king in his place. Our next reading is John chapter 18, verse 1 to verse 18. After Jesus had spoken these words, he went out with his disciples across the Kidron Valley, where they entered a garden. Now, Judas, his betrayer, also knew the place because Jesus had often met there with his disciples. So Judas brought a band of soldiers and officers from the chief priests and Pharisees. They arrived at the garden carrying lanterns, torches, and weapons. Jesus, knowing all that was coming upon him, stepped forward and asked them, "Whom are you seeking?" "Jesus of Nazareth," they answered. Jesus said, "I am he." And Judas, his betrayer, was standing there with them. When Jesus said, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. So he asked them again, "Whom are you seeking?" "Jesus of Nazareth," they answered. "I told you that I am he," Jesus replied. "So if you are looking for me, let these men go." This was to fulfill the word he had spoken. "I have not lost one of those you have given me." Then Simon Peter drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. "Put your sword back in its sheath," Jesus said to Peter. "Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me?" Then the band of soldiers with its commander and the officers of the Jews arrested Jesus and bound him. They brought him first to Annas, who was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, the high priest that year. Caiaphas was the one who had advised the Jews that it would be better if one man died for the people. Now Simon Peter and another disciple were following Jesus. Since that disciple was known to the high priest, he also went with Jesus into the courtyard of the high priest. But Peter stood outside at the door. Then the disciple who was known to the high priest went out and spoke to the doorkeeper and brought Peter in. At this, the servant girl watching the door said to Peter, "Aren't you also one of this man's disciples?" "I am not," he answered. Because it was cold, the servants and officers were standing around a charcoal fire they had made to keep warm, and Peter was also standing with them, warming himself. Meanwhile, the high priest questioned Jesus about his disciples and his teaching. "I have spoken openly to the world," Jesus answered. "I always taught in the synagogues and at the temple where all the Jews come together. I said nothing in secret. Why are you asking me? Ask those who heard my message. Surely they know what I said." When Jesus had said this, one of the officers standing nearby slapped him in the face and said, "Is this how you answer the high priest?" Jesus replied, "If I said something wrong, testify as to what was wrong. But if I spoke correctly, why did you strike me?" Then Annas sent him, still bound, to Caiaphas the high priest. Simon Peter was still standing and warming himself, so they asked him, "Aren't you also one of his disciples?" He denied it and said, "I am not." One of the high priest's servants, a relative of the man whose hair Peter had cut off, asked, "Didn't I see you with him in the garden?" Peter denied it once more, and immediately a rooster crowed. Then they led Jesus away from Caiaphas into the praetorium. By now it was early morning, and the Jews did not enter the praetorium to avoid being defiled and unable to eat the Passover. So Pilate went out to them and asked, "What accusation are you bringing against this man?" "If you were not a criminal," they replied, "we would not have handed him over to you. You take him and judge him by your own law." Pilate told them, "We are not permitted to execute anyone." The Jews replied. This was to fulfill the words that Jesus had spoken to indicate the kind of death he was going to die. Pilate went back into the praetorium, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "Are you saying this on your own?" Jesus asked, "or did others tell you about me?" "Am I a Jew?" Pilate replied. "Your own people and chief priests handed you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jews. But now my kingdom is not of this realm." "Then you are a king," Pilate said. "You say that I am a king," Jesus answered. "For this reason I was born, and have come into the world to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." "What is truth?" Pilate asked. And having said this, he went out again to the Jews and told them, "I find no basis for a charge against him. But it is your custom that I release to you one prisoner at the Passover. So then, do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews?" "Not this man," they shouted, "but Barabbas." Now Barabbas was an insurrectionist. We're supposed to read John chapter 18, verse 1 to 18, but we've read the entire chapter, verse 1 to verse 40. Okay, so let's move to the next reading for today. 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 1 to verse 16. "Brothers, I could not address you as spiritual, but as worldly, as infants in Christ. I gave you milk, not solid food, for you were not yet ready for solid food. In fact, you are still not ready, for you are still worldly. For since there is jealousy and dissension among you, are you not worldly? Are you not walking in the way of man? For when one of you says, 'I follow Paul,' and another, 'I follow Apollos,' are you not mere men? What then is Apollos and what is Paul? They are servants through whom you believed, as the Lord has assigned each his role. I planted the seed, and Apollos watered it, but God made it grow. So neither he who plants nor he who waters is anything, but only God who makes things grow. He who plants and he who waters are one in purpose, and each will be rewarded according to his own labor. For we are God's fellow workers. You are God's field, God's building. By the grace God has given me, I laid a foundation as an expert builder, and someone else is building on it. But each one must be careful how he builds, for no one can lay a foundation other than the one already laid, which is Jesus Christ. If anyone builds on this foundation using gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, or straw, his workmanship will be evident, because the day will bring it to light. It will be revealed with fire, and the fire will prove the quality of each man's work. If what he has built survives, he will receive a reward. If it is burnt up, he will suffer loss. He himself will be saved, but only as if through the flames. Do you not know that you yourselves are God's temple, and that God's Spirit dwells in you? Now we're going to read our next reading for today, which is from the book of Psalms, chapter 45. My heart is stirred by a noble theme as I recite my verses to the king. My tongue is the pen of a skillful writer. You are the most handsome of men. Grace has anointed your lips, since God has blessed you forever. Strap your sword at your side, O mighty warrior. Appear in your majesty and splendor. In your splendor, ride forth in victory on behalf of truth and humility and justice. May your right hand show your awesome deeds. Your arrows pierce the hearts of the king's foes. The nations fall beneath your feet. Your throne, O God, endures forever and ever, and justice is the scepter of your kingdom. You have loved righteousness and hated wickedness. Therefore, God, your God, has anointed you above your companions with the oil of joy. All your garments are fragrant with myrrh and aloes and cassia. From palaces of ivory, the harps make you glad. The daughters of kings are among your honored women. The queen stands at your right hand, adorned with the gold of Ophir. Listen, O daughter, consider and incline your ear. Forget your people and your father's house, and the king will desire your beauty. Bow to him, for he is your Lord. The daughter of Tyre will come with a gift. Men of wealth will seek your favor. All glorious is the princess in her chamber. Her gown is embroidered with gold. In colorful garments she is led to the king. Her virgin companions are brought before you. They are led in with joy and gladness. They enter the palace of the king. Your sons will succeed your fathers. You will make them princes throughout the land. I will commemorate your name through all generations. Therefore, the nations will praise you forever and ever. May the Lord bless the reading and hearing of his word.